You felt it before you understood it. A sudden itch, a strange signal, a warning hiding in your own flesh. What if your body is reacting to something unseen? What if ancient forces leave marks before they make moves? I'm not guessing. I've been inside the darkness, and what I'm about to expose was never meant to be spoken aloud. Your body reacts before your mind understands. That is not accidental, it is strategic. When I was deep inside satanic ritual systems, we were taught one thing early. The body is the doorway. The flesh is the alarm system. Before influence becomes control, there is always a signal. You were never taught this, because if you understood it, you would resist earlier. An unexplained itch is not always physical. Sometimes it is a spiritual fingerprint, a pressure test, a probe. In occult hierarchies, demons do not rush. They observe. They test sensitivity. They look for open gates created by trauma, fear, sin, exhaustion, or ignorance. And the first place they test is the nervous system, your skin, your reactions, your impulses. That itch that appears suddenly, no rash, no allergy, no medical cause, that is often the first warning. I watched rituals where names were spoken quietly, not shouted, because the goal was not possession. The goal was permission. Demons do not need ownership if they gain access. Access is enough to influence. Influence is enough to drain. Drainage is enough to weaken. And weakness creates agreement. Certain areas of the body were targeted intentionally, not randomly, never randomly, because different regions of the body correspond to different forms of influence. When itching appears repeatedly in the same place, especially during prayer, rest, or moments of clarity, something is reacting to resistance. That is not imagination. That is exposure. I remember being taught that the body reacts when light approaches. Darkness does not fear noise. It fears awareness. You start seeking truth. You start pulling away from old habits. You start breaking cycles. That is when the body signals first, because the spirit realm recognizes shifts before humans do. This is why many people feel sudden irritation when they are about to change, when they are about to pray, when they are about to sleep peacefully, when they are about to step into purpose. That irritation is not always external. Sometimes is internal resistance manifesting physically. In satanic practice, marking did not always mean ownership. It meant observation. It meant monitoring response. A demon tests how quickly you react, how emotionally you respond, how easily you become distracted. An itch seems harmless, but it pulls attention. It breaks focus. It disrupts stillness. That is the point. Stillness is dangerous to darkness. Silence strengthens discernment. Rest restores authority. So disturbance is introduced. You scratch. Your attention shifts. Your peace fractures. Small victory. Strategic victory. You may ask why you specifically, why now? Because something in you changed. You did not notice it, but the realm you cannot see did. You became harder to manipulate, less reactive, more aware. And when awareness rises, monitoring begins. This is why fear must be addressed immediately. Fear feeds access. Fear creates agreement. The occult operates on consent even when it is subconscious. They rely on ignorance to gain it. But listen carefully. An itch does not mean you are owned. It does not mean you are doomed. It does not mean you are defeated. It means you are being noticed. And being noticed means you are no longer invisible. In darkness, invisibility equals safety. Visibility means threat. That is why resistance often begins with discomfort. I have seen people step out of darkness and experience physical sensations they could not explain. Pressure, tingling, heat, irritation. And they thought something was wrong. Nothing was wrong. Something was leaving. Dark influence does not exit quietly. It resists exposure. It resents authority. And your body reacts when authority rises. This is why discernment matters more than panic. If you immediately assume fear, you give ground. If you respond with authority, you close gates. The enemy studies reactions, not strength. You do not need to know every name. You need to know your position. And your position is higher than anything testing you. The itch is not the message. Your response is, will you panic? Will you obsess? Will you spiral? Or will you stand? Because standing disrupts monitoring. When I left Satanism, the first thing I had to unlearn was fear of sensation. Because darkness exaggerates sensation to simulate power. But sensation is not dominance. Authority is quiet, stable, grounded. If you are feeling unexplained physical signals, especially during moments of clarity or spiritual alignment, do not assume weakness. Assume resistance. And resistance means pressure is being applied because progress is happening. This is not superstition. This is strategy. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. You are becoming aware. And awareness is the beginning of separation. Darkness does not mark what it already owns. It marks what it wants to track, which means you are not theirs. And that should change how you respond. Stand firm. Stay alert. Do not fear sensations. They are temporary. Authority is permanent. Not every itch carries the same intention. Location matters. Precision matters. In the occult, nothing is symbolic by accident. Every target has meaning. Every region of the body represents a function that darkness wants to influence. This is where people get uncomfortable because it feels too accurate, too personal. That is exactly why it works. When itching appears repeatedly in the head or scalp, it is often connected to thought interference, mental fog, confusion, sudden intrusive thoughts that do not sound like you. I watched rituals where this region was targeted to weaken discernment. If thinking becomes unstable, decision-making collapses. And when decisions weaken, authority follows. You start doubting what you already knew. You question clarity you once trusted. That is not random. When itching appears around the eyes, it is connected to perception, what you are allowed to see, what you are prevented from noticing. Darkness does not always blind. Sometimes it distracts. You miss patterns. You overlook red flags. You feel tired when trying to focus on truth. That irritation near the eyes often appears when revelation is close. It is a disruption attempt. The ears are targeted for a reason. Influence enters through what you listen to. Fear, negativity, voices that drain instead of build. An itch near the ears often accompanies confusion about what voices to trust. External opinions begin to overpower inner conviction. That is strategic. The mouth and lips represent speech and agreement. Words carry power. Declarations shape direction. I have seen people experience irritation here when they are about to speak truth, when they are about to confront, when they are about to pray out loud. Silence benefits darkness. If you hesitate to speak, influence remains unchecked. The neck is one of the most significant regions. It represents alignment between thought and action, head to body, decision to movement. Pressure or itching in the neck often appears when you are about to change direction, leave something, end something, obey something difficult. Darkness resists movement more than belief. Belief without action is harmless. Action breaks systems. The chest is tied to emotional authority, courage, identity, conviction. When itching or tightness appears here, it often coincides with emotional testing. Fear tries to rise. Doubt tries to anchor. I have seen this used to provoke anxiety, to weaken confidence, to collapse resolve. The goal is not pain. The goal is retreat. The hands represent productivity and influence. What you build, what you touch, what you release. Irritation in the Hands often appears when someone is about to step into purpose-driven action, create, serve, lead. Darkness fears productive authority. An inactive person is easy to manage. An active one is dangerous. The stomach is deeply symbolic. It represents intuition and inner warning. Gut instinct. When itching or discomfort appears here, it often accompanies suppression of truth you already sense. You know something is wrong, but you delay acting. That delay creates internal conflict, and conflict creates access. The lower back and legs represent stability and forward movement. Standing firm. Walking forward. Irritation here often accompanies resistance to progress. Fatigue when moving ahead, sudden heaviness. Darkness wants you stationary, not advancing, not growing. And then there is the feet, direction, destiny, path. I have seen itching here used to create distraction just before major transitions, moves, decisions, commitments. The smallest irritation can delay a step, and delay can cause momentum. This is not about obsession, it is about awareness. Darkness relies on people dismissing patterns. One itch means nothing. Repeated signals in the same place during key moments mean observation. And observation means attention. But hear this clearly. Attention from darkness does not equal authority over you. It means you are interfering with something. If you were irrelevant, there would be no response. Most people only experience surface-level disturbance because they never threaten deeper systems. But when someone begins to wake up, patterns change. The enemy does not announce presence. It tests boundaries. And the body responds first because the mind is trained to rationalize. This is why fear is the wrong response. Fear amplifies sensation. Authority neutralizes it. When I left occult systems, the most dangerous people to them were not the loud ones. It was the calm ones, the aware ones, the grounded ones. Because awareness collapses manipulation. You do not need to interpret every sensation. You need to remain grounded in truth. If something tries to distract you from peace, from clarity, from forward movement, it has exposed its intention, and exposure removes leverage. Darkness hates being seen, hates being named, hates being resisted without panic, which is why this knowledge matters, not to make you afraid, but to make you unmovable. Intensity increases when alignment increases. That is a law. Darkness does not react to routine. It reacts to disruption. When you begin to break patterns, the pressure changes. When you start seeing clearly, resistance escalates, not because you are weak, but because you are effective. This is where many people misunderstand what is happening to them. They assume attack means failure. In reality, attack often signals progress. In occult systems, we were trained to ignore people who were stagnant. There was no need to interfere. They were already neutralized by distraction, comfort, or fear. But when someone started asking real questions, attention shifted. Because truth exposure threatens systems. When you start seeking clarity, your internal frequency changes. Your tolerance for manipulation drops. Your discernment sharpens. And discernment is dangerous to darkness. This is why unexplained physical sensations often appear during moments of spiritual alignment. Prayer, rest, reflection, decision-making. Those are moments when authority stabilizes. Darkness hates stability. Chaos is its environment. Confusion is its camouflage. So disruption is introduced, an itch, a distraction, a sudden restlessness. Anything to pull you out of stillness. Stillness allows perception. Perception leads to choice. Choice breaks influence. In rituals, timing mattered more than force. Interference was always applied at transitional moments, before sleep, before commitment. before obedience. Because transition is when control is most vulnerable. If you can delay someone, you can weaken momentum. If you can exhaust someone, you can slow clarity. If you can distract someone, you can prevent decision. This is why sensations often intensify right before breakthroughs. You are not imagining it. I watched people abandon transformation because they misunderstood resistance. They thought something was wrong with them. So they retreated. That retreat was the objective. Darkness does not need to defeat you. It only needs to discourage you. And discouragement often arrives disguised as discomfort. The body becomes the battleground because it is immediate. The mind takes time to reason. The body reacts instantly. So pressure is applied there first. But understand this, pressure without permission has limits. Darkness cannot cross authority. It can only test boundaries. And when boundaries are reinforced, pressure collapses. This is why grounding matters more than interpretation. If you obsess over sensation, you give it power. If you remain steady, it loses leverage. I have seen people panic and amplify their own discomfort. Fear magnifies sensation. Calm dissolves it. The enemy wants reaction, not awareness. Reaction gives feedback. Awareness closes loops. When you do not react emotionally, monitoring becomes ineffective. This is why mature authority looks quiet. No panic, no obsession, no fixation, just grounded presence. If you are experiencing intensified sensations while pursuing clarity, understand the timing. This is not random. This is resistance to alignment. You are stepping out of automatic living, out of unconscious agreement, into intentional authority. And that shift disrupts unseen structures. Darkness does not fight light directly. It fights focus. If it can pull your attention away, it can delay exposure. That is why small distractions are often more effective than dramatic ones. And each seems insignificant, but it fractures attention, and fractured attention weakens resolve. This is why discipline matters. Not discipline of fear, discipline of focus. When sensations appear, do not feed them with anxiety. Anchor yourself. Stand in clarity. Remain present. Continue forward. Resistance often peaks right before collapse. I have seen systems fall apart because someone refused to retreat, refused to panic, refused to be distracted. Darkness overplays its hand when exposure is near. It becomes louder, more irritating, more persistent. That is not power. That is desperation. And desperation reveals vulnerability. You are not being punished. You are being tested. And tests reveal strength. Every time you choose calm over fear, authority increases. Every time you continue despite discomfort, influence weakens. The enemy wants you hyper-focused on sensation, because sensation without context feels overwhelming. But context removes fear. You are not under control. You are under observation. And observation means boundaries are being tested, not breached. This is why you must not retreat from truth when discomfort appears. Truth is the very thing collapsing interference. If you stop now, pressure wins. If you continue, pressure fades. Because darkness cannot sustain exposure. It thrives in confusion, not clarity. And clarity is what you are stepping into, which is why resistance is reacting. Not because you are losing, but because something is losing grip. Observation ends when authority is enforced, not when fear reacts, not when curiosity spirals. Monitoring collapses when boundaries are clear. Darkness studies patterns. It watches how you respond to pressure, how quickly you panic, how long you stay distracted. The moment you stop feeding reaction, interest fades. This is where most people fail. They focus on the sensation instead of their position. Position matters more than experience. In occult systems, authority was always respected, not because of volume, but because of alignment. A person grounded in truth cannot be easily monitored. There is no leverage, no instability, no emotional access point. That is why calm is threatening. When you remain steady during discomfort, you communicate dominance without words. You are not required to fight sensations. You are required to refuse fear. Fear is the currency of interference. The first step in shutting down monitoring is refusal to interpret everything emotionally. Not every sensation deserves attention. Not every signal deserves meaning. Awareness without obsession is power. Obsession feeds loops. Loops invite repetition. When you refuse to loop, influence weakens. The second step is clarity of identity. Darkness tests people who are unsure of who they are. Uncertainty creates cracks. When identity is stable, pressure has nowhere to attach. This is why inner alignment matters more than external behavior. You do not need dramatic rituals. You need internal certainty. Certainty communicates authority across realms. The third step is consistency, not intensity. Consistency. Moments of courage followed by retreat still communicate instability, but steady presence communicates strength. I watched people lose influence over others because they could not maintain consistency. They would apply pressure, then withdraw. Apply pressure, then withdraw. That pattern invites challenge. But when someone remains grounded regardless of resistance, interest fades. Darkness does not waste resources on people it cannot influence. The fourth step is intentional focus. Attention is energy. Where attention stays, influence flows. If you focus on peace, peace stabilizes. If you focus on fear, fear multiplies. This is not mystical. This is neurological and spiritual alignment. Your nervous system responds to what you prioritize. Calm trains authority into the body. This is why breath matters, posture matters, presence matters. Authority is embodied. When you stand grounded, sensation loses impact. The fifth step is spoken alignment. Words establish boundaries. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is permission. This does not mean shouting. It means clear internal declaration. You decide what has access. Decision precedes dominance. In occult systems, consent was everything. Even unspoken consent counted. But consent can be withdrawn, and withdrawal shifts power instantly. When you internally reject fear-based interpretation, access collapses. The sixth step is forward movement. Do not pause life because of discomfort. Movement breaks monitoring. Stagnation invites observation. Momentum disrupts it. This is why progress often dissolves interference. When you continue building, choosing, and acting, pressure loses relevance. Darkness wants you frozen. Still, overthinking. Motion starves it. I have seen people walk straight through resistance because they refuse to stop. Not aggressive, not frantic. Just steady. Steadiness is unmanageable. This is why your response matters more than sensation. The itch is not the threat. Your reaction is the target. When reaction is neutralized, the tactic fails. And failed tactics are abandoned. You are not meant to live hyper-aware of every feeling. You are meant to live grounded in authority. Awareness is a tool, not a prison. The goal of this knowledge is not vigilance. It is freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from obsession. Freedom from imagined power. Because darkness exaggerates its reach. It relies on mystery to feel large, but exposure shrinks it. When you understand patterns, fear loses fuel. When fear loses fuel, influence collapses. This is why this confession matters. Not to make you suspicious of your body, but to teach you how to respond with authority. Your body is not betraying you, it is signaling shifts. And shifts mean movement. Movement means growth. Growth threatens systems that rely on stagnation, so resistance appears. But resistance does not mean defeat. It means something is changing, and change always disrupts control. Stand grounded. Stay focused. Move forward. Do not retreat from clarity because of discomfort. Clarity is what ends interference. And interference cannot survive sustained authority. You were never powerless. You were uninformed. And information breaks chains. Stand firm. Do not react. Do not retreat. What watches you loses power when you stand in truth. This ends with you grounded, aware, and unshaken. Authority is yours. Stay standing.